Please take your seats.
I was trying. All right, everybody, let's take our seats. Welcome, everyone, please. I'd like to invite you to take your seats as we get going here at the start of the Planet MicroCap Showcase Vegas in partnership with MicroCapClub. I just want to take a moment and look around because this is, we've been doing this for 11 years, and wow, it's really cool to see this turn out. And it's been a lot of hard work, effort, sacrifices, everything that you can probably imagine, and we're just so thankful. Sorry, I actually prepared something little. I'm usually much more off the cuff for those of you who listen to my podcast, so I actually did prepare this time. But welcome to the Planet MicroCap Showcase Vegas in partnership with MicroCapClub. We've been hosting investor conferences since 2014, and this is our 11th year in 2025, and we're so excited to host you in the entertainment and business capital of the world, Las Vegas. We're also extremely thankful that you took the time out of your busy schedules to join us in celebrating the best of what the microcap community has to offer. While the bones are the same, this year's event is a little different. We've partnered up with the premier, largest global online and now in-person microcap investing community, MicroCapClub. When Ian and I started chatting about what this event and our upcoming event in Toronto could be, we had a shared vision that no matter how big or small the event is, our goal was that it is investor-driven. So we actively asked you what companies you wanted to see, and the schedule of speakers, keynotes, stock pitches, panels were all carefully curated with your enjoyment in mind. So truly, thank you. This event is for you, the microcap investor, driven by you, and we're here to make sure that it's delivered properly. I have a lot of thank yous, but first and foremost, Planet MicroCap is a family business, and I wouldn't be here for the last 14 years if it wasn't for the infrastructure that my parents, Shelly and Lulu, had established here. So, give them a little hello. It's, Logan. So, just so you know, it's the Logan Roy looking guy right there. That's my father. And my mom is in the back over there, Lulu. So give them a shout, and they're the best. Also, a special thank you to our team on the ground here in Vegas, also a family business, Leanne and Amy Short. Truly, thank you for all of your hard work and dedication. I'd also like to thank all of our presenting companies who are taking the time away from running their businesses to share with you their stories. They're thrilled to be here and engage with you, and look forward to the opportunity to showcase themselves during their presentations on Wednesday and one-on-ones both on Wednesday and Thursday. So thank you to our sponsors as well. Your support for Planet MicroCap is validating and lays the foundation from which we continue to provide an amazing service for the microcap community. Quick housekeeping stuff, reminders, tomorrow and Thursday, all the one-on-ones are going to be in the exhibitor hall right over here, Champagne and Versailles. You guys are all got here, so I'm pretty sure you're getting my emails, but might as well get it out of the way. It's all going to be in there for one-on-ones with attendees and investors. You guys are going to be going booth to booth for each one, and it's all alphabetical from A to Z going this way. So just wanted to make sure you guys knew that. Now, the reason why this year's event title is as long as it is MicroCapClub. I remember discovering MicroCapClub in 2011 when I was a green and had no idea what I was doing. This was before the subscriber option was available, and we had time to write up ideas for the opportunity to gain entry to this exclusive club of what I came to find out quickly was the most talented and brilliant group of investors, period. I was starting to meet more and more members as the years went on, and all I wanted was to become as good as an investor as the members that I met. That was my whole reason for starting Planet MicroCap podcast in 2015, to become the best investor I could be, and inspired by the brilliance from so many folks in this room. I was and am in awe from many of the MicroCapClub members from those early days: Ian, Sean Iddings, Sean Marconi, Neil Cataldi, Kevin Shea, Paul Andriola, Maj Sway-Don, Chip Maloney, Meredith Brill, Mike Schellinger, Connor Haley, Matthew Martin, the whole Montreal Mafia, Brandon Mackey, Mark Vonderweld, Jason Hirschman, Adam Wilk, Michael Liu, Dean Trottier, John Legorg, Sam Namiri. I mean, the list really goes on. And the coolest part is I continue to be awestruck by each and every new member that joins the MicroCapClub ranks. I get stoked every time there's a new alert from Sean about a new pitch from either a current or new member that was just approved. The talent MicroCapClub attracts is world-class, and we're thankful for the opportunity to lend our platform as an extension to bring the magic of the online community to Vegas. I'm beyond grateful for your embrace of the podcast, now our event, as well as allowing me the opportunity to be the microphone from which the greater masses can also learn about and deep dive all things microcap stocks. Now, perfect segue to our next speaker, who I think is too humble for some of the descriptions I'm about to share. The Pied Piper of microcaps, the ultimate Twitter or X investor guru, one of the most thoughtful people I know, and probably the person who cares more about the microcap community and ecosystem than anyone you or I know, and that's Ian Cassel. He was my first ever interview on Planet MicroCap podcast back in 2015, and has sparked an awesome friendship and has grown to this incredible partnership here in Vegas and Toronto. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker here at the Planet MicroCap Showcase, Ian Cassel.
Wow, it's a lot of people here. This is amazing. You know, I'm going to thank Bobby and Shelly and Lulu and the Crafts, and the team. It takes an army to put on an event this size, and really appreciate everybody's effort. I think, as Bobby said, this is their, I believe, 11th year doing physical events as an independent event, and I think it's one heck of an achievement. So let's give them another round of applause. You know, it's an honor to partner with them at this year in Vegas, and we look forward to partnering with them again in October in Toronto. We hope you join us there as well. And this is really MicroCapClub's first foray into kind of larger scale events. We normally have our own independent event. It's smaller by design, but I've always kind of seen the benefits of having a larger scalable event, mainly to have a bigger impact on the microcap space as a whole. And if I'm being honest, though, you know, most larger microcap and small cap events, they're not built for the companies, they're not built for investors, they're built for service providers and banks. And it just results in a mediocre experience for investors and companies. And, you know, basically this event's going to be different. And I don't know how many companies are actually in the audience yet. Some of you are probably setting up your booths, but here's a quick joke that at least the companies will find funny. You know, what do you call someone who shows up unprepared for a company one-on-one meeting? An investment bank. Now that I've offended half our sponsors, I'll move on. But you know, the nice thing is that there's plenty of room for improvement, and at this event we put the company and we put the investor first, and I hope that everyone here can feel that. We have 550 investors attending from 34 countries. We have some of them listed up on the screen, and you know, I think it's probably 3 times more investors than any other event, probably in the United States at least. And you know, I really appreciate everybody for rallying around this event like you did. I first called it the Super Bowl of microcap, and then one of our members pointed out, no, it's pretty global. It's probably more like the World Cup of microcap, and I think he was right. You know, but again, 34 countries, and I actually had to Google search this, but does anybody know the furthest point away from Las Vegas, Nevada, what the furthest point away is on the globe? You can yell at it if you have a guess. If you don't, it's fine. But it actually is Madagascar, island off the coast of Southeast Africa. But we actually have an investor that's flown in from South Africa, you know, and that's pretty close. You know, it's 10,000 miles away, and really appreciate him for making that effort to be here. You might also be wondering which investor came the closest distance, you know, and that's actually our very own Jason Hirschman. 2.7 miles. You know, I probably could walk here. Really appreciate him for making that effort. He gets the laziest investor award. Yeah. An incredible lineup of companies, 110 companies, about half of them are profitable. You can see the sector breakdown, the exchange breakdown on the left here. I think 30% from tech, 13% healthcare, 11% industrial. You know, we have 33% NASDAQ, about 14% OTC, and you can read the rest. One of the other cool things I did was I had Ryan Telford pull down the list, the lineup of 110 companies, create an equal weight index out of them, And how would an equal weight index of all the presenting companies perform trailing 12 months? And so you can see the results up there. I call it the PMV, but plus 14.3%. That's as of April 11th, compared to the iShares MicroCap ETF down 7.8%. That was pretty good. It's pretty incredible performance. I then had him add up all those companies, take all the 110 companies, make them into one company. What does that one company look like? Well, that one company looks like 8.4 billion market cap, 6.5 billion in revenues, a $440 million loss. But look at the adjusted EBITDA though, 4 billion. Yeah, that's a joke. The secret sauce to a great microcap event is getting high quality companies, because high quality investors want to meet with high quality companies, and then the following year you have it, all the high quality companies know that the high quality investors are there, and that's the flywheel. You just need to get kick-started, and that's what we're trying to do this year. And Andrew Rem, who is I didn't tell him I was going to mention him, but he's a MicroCapClub, he's a small cap manager. He said this, posted it on the club the other day. I've done a ton of conferences over my career and a ton of one-on-ones, but never experienced a list where I can book a day and a half of one-on-ones where I'm genuinely interested in each business, either because I own them or could own them. And I hope that there's many more of you that feel the same way. I think we're up to 1,820 one-on-one meetings between companies and investors. That has to also be a record, and that makes me smile ear to ear. As many of you know, Sean Eddings and I co-authored 2 books on the topic of intelligent fanatics. And intelligent fanatic is a term that Charlie Munger used to describe a great business builder, a great entrepreneur. Someone that built a business from scratch into a business that not only dominated their niche and industry or maybe even their geography, but they dominated it for decades, over a long period of time. And Sean Eddings and I think we studied probably 100 to 200 of these great leaders, these great business builders. And do you know what each one of those leaders had in common? The common element among all of them? Well, it's actually high standards. You don't start with a single store in Arkansas and in 25 years become the largest retailer in the world without high standards. You don't launch a rocket ship up into space and have it land back down to Earth again without high standards. You don't create the most dominant quick service restaurant chain in the United States that's also closed on Sundays without high standards. Whether it's Jeff Bezos and his customer obsession or Steve Jobs and his focus on design or function, high standards are really the key to everything. High standards is how you create a dominant business. High standards change the world. If you want to be like everybody else, just lower your standards. The microcap space, I believe, is in desperate need of high standards. And when I met with the Kraft several months ago about this event and future events, we all agreed we need to keep on raising the bar, raising the standard year over year. And this year is just the starting point. And it starts with the venue. Last year, this event was at the Horseshoe next door. This year, obviously, it's here at the Paris. Next year, it's likely at the Bellagio across the street. Again, just stair-stepping the standard up. Quality companies. I think around half the companies are profitable this year. Every year, I want to continue to raise that standard, so a higher percentage of companies is profitable year over year. And it comes back to quality investors, too. I hope that all of you have so much fun over the next 2.5 days that you go back home, you tell a friend about it, and you bring them next year. The goal is for this to be the Berkshire Hathaway of microcap, and the only way to do that is with high standards. And it goes back to our sponsors and partners, and we appreciate their support in this event. Every year we want to continue to raise the standard for the people that and the groups that we're partnering with as well. We're going to raise the standard every year. That's how this event will become the best microcap event in the world, and it's how we're going to impact this space. For those of you that aren't familiar with MicroCapClub, I thought I'd just give you a quick overview about the club, about our ethos. And we're a global community of microcap stock pickers. We have some of the best stock pickers on the planet, on the community. I know that. There's only 2 ways to join: membership and subscription. Membership has always been free, and you get in by submitting an investment thesis on your favorite microcap stock. And we usually get 20 to 30 applications every month. I think in March we actually had 37, a new record. And at the end of every month, our membership votes on the quality level of those applications. You get enough votes, you get in; you don't, you don't. And we also prune out inactive members. And so what's interesting is over the last 10 or 15 years, we've always had 250 to 300 members, because we're constantly adding new members, and then we're pruning out the inactive members, and it's just created a very vibrant, active, small community. You might be wondering, why is membership free? Well, it's because great companies are first found by retail investors, and they're not found by institutions. And mostly, a lot of those retail investors are what I would call young, smart, and poor. And I never wanted a paywall to be up in front of somebody that's young and smart from joining our community and uncovering the next great company. A lot of you are, the 20-somethings that remind me of me 20 years ago when I wasn't married, didn't have kids, didn't have bills or responsibilities. I want to go back in time. But I never wanted a paywall to be up in front of anybody being a member, and I think it's really kind of our differentiator. You can also join by subscription, and you can pay, and just if you don't have the time or ability to be a member, and you can pay to gain access to the community. But we have no egos in the community. It doesn't matter whether you're managing a $200 million fund or if you have $1,000 in a Schwab account. Everyone's treated equally. And I think that's kind of been our big differentiator over the years. This is what the inside of the community looks like. It looks like a message board or forum where people are talking and discussing microcap stocks. Members are profiling new ideas. People are profiling new ideas. They're discussing current ideas. Over 1,200 companies profiled since inception. It's just an incredible place to find ideas and a network. In the upper right, we have some events that we put on. One that we started a year ago is we call it Business Breakdowns, and Adam Wilk heads that effort. He's the host of that, and what we do is we try to find a high-quality microcap company. We find the member or investor that knows that company best. We invite the CEO on the program to give a presentation and do a Q&A, kind of wrap it up and throw it out there to the public for free, and just showcasing high-quality companies, giving recognition to the investor that knows it best, and just kind of creating that flywheel of quality. In the lower right, you'll see that each member is ranked, and they're ranked by the cumulative returns of every company they profiled since they've been a member. It's just an easy way to kind of track who profiled the most long-term winners. You can follow members, you can follow me, you can follow anybody that you want to follow and be alerted every time they post. You can follow threads if there's 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 companies you like. You can follow those threads and be alerted every time somebody posts on that thread. So there's a whole bunch of ways to get signal out of the community. This chart here, it kind of just shows how many companies have been profiled since 2018, the new record last year, about 180. And 1,200 companies, actually I think we're just over 1,300 now on the club, and every month the company produces the community produces 10 to 20 new ideas every month. And they cover really all facets of investing, flavors of investing. We're not a value snob club. We want all flavors, whether that's deep value or story stock, kind of represented on the community. One of the really interesting and awesome trends that we've been seeing over the last few years is we're getting more global. Maybe 8, 9 years ago, 95% of the membership was US and Canadian, and today it's 24% European, about 11% I think is Australian, and I think we have more and more Asian companies being profiled, which means everything's just getting more global, and it's why we have such a global presence even here at this event, is because of the community. And I think that excites me because it means we're driving new quality investors into this space, which it desperately needs from all over the world. And I think the club's been a big catalyst for that. 1,200 microcaps profiled, 192 of them have been acquired, 250 plus multi-baggers profiled since 2011. That means that more than one multi-bagger has been profiled per month since 2011 by the community, which I think is a heck of a statistic. But to be honest with me, the part I enjoy most is it's not about me. I get to put our membership up on a screen, up on a podium, talk about you on X, and for me it's a genuine community. The club's not just some veil for me to kind of point people to the 10 ideas I think are the most interesting. In fact, one of the things that gives me the most joy is when I profile a new idea and the stock doesn't budge. That means, we're a genuine community. It's really about working together to uncover the next great company, wherever it is in the world. Back in 2022, Jenga Investment Partners did a white paper called Global Outperformers, and they analyzed all global equities between 2012 and 2022. And what they found is up on the screen. 87% of all global equities that went up 1,000% or more originated out of the microcap ecosystem during that 10-year period, and a majority of them were profitable. So if you want to find a multi-bagger, find a small, growing, profitable company that doesn't need to dilute you. And it's why this event is focused on, mainly on small, growing, profitable companies, because that's where multi-baggers come from. It's always bothered me how there is no index that tracks the real businesses in the microcap space, the profitable ones. I mean, all we have is, here in the States, is the iShares MicroCap ETF, which is 60% unprofitable companies. And of course, that's going to have a horrific long-term CAGR. I think it's 4% over the last 10 years compared to the S&P at 12%. It annoys me because it's yet another way for the financial media or for anybody to kind of point at microcap and say this is an uninvestable place to invest. Why doesn't anyone produce an index of profitable microcap businesses? So we did it. We took the 1,200 companies profiled on MicroCapClub, screened them for trailing 12-month profitability, equal weighted them in an index, rebalanced them quarterly, and you can see the results on the screen. We beat the NASDAQ last year, and we didn't have NVIDIA, in our index. We just had 273 boring global microcap profitable companies. And, even this year, year to date, it's beating the S&P, which is pretty incredible. Just think if we had something like this to showcase to the world about microcap, how that would change the perception. We brought on Ryan Telford earlier this year as our head of evidence-based research, and you're going to be hearing from him for another hour or so. And he's analyzing all the evidence, all the data. He's a quant, basically. And he's going to be sharing some of his research with you. And we're likely going to be redoing our index into something new, and we'll be discussing that probably another couple of weeks. Last but not least, this is our North Star. The thing that hurts progress in microcap is the negative perception about penny stocks. 99% of the financial world thinks that this is a sleazy, slimy industry with mediocre companies, mediocre management teams, financed by mediocre banks, CPAs, attorneys, consultants. Just mediocre. And this might not bother many of you investors. In fact, it probably doesn't bother most of you investors, but it should, and I'll tell you why. It's really that negative perception that stops really good small companies from going public in the first place. It's that negative perception that's making it harder to get companies funded. It's that negative perception that's causing brokerage accounts, Interactive Brokers being one of the worst, to really halt trading in microcap companies in your accounts. It's that negative perception that's killing this space. The 3 bullet points I have up on the screen are the same bullet points I had in my presentation 10 years ago at our first summit. We need to bring credibility and respect back to microcap. We need to focus on quality over quantity, and we need high standards. And this is our North Star. This is a mission of mine. It's why I'm as vocal as I am on X. It's why I do as many interviews as I do, is to hopefully make a positive impact on this space. So if you aren't part of MicroCapClub, this is our ethos. This is what we're about, and I hope you join us. Now I want to tell you a cool story that you never heard of. Does anybody know who this gentleman is? I sure hope not. Well, this is David Bushnell. He was born in 1740 in Saybrook, Connecticut. He was the son of a poor farmer, and when he was in his mid-20s, his father died, and his father left him 50% interest in the family farm. But David wasn't a farmer, he was a tinkerer, he was an inventor, and he wasn't interested in the family farm, and he actually took the money that he got from selling his 50% interest to his brother Ezra. He took that money and he attended Yale College in 1771. And while at Yale, he started experimenting with different methods of exploding gunpowder underwater. He basically made underwater mines. He also invented the first underwater propeller. And he brought all this tinkering and invention together to create a vehicle called the Turtle. On April 19th, 1775, the first shots of the Revolutionary War were fired. And David Bushnell was in his last year at Yale. And the school decided to close down early that year because of the war. And he ended up going back home to his family farm to finish up his work on the Turtle. Several months later, David Bushnell finished his work and he unveiled the Turtle to the world in a demonstration. And none other than Benjamin Franklin himself attended this demonstration. And Benjamin Franklin would then travel to visit General George Washington to tell him what he saw that day. And this is what he saw. The Turtle was the first functioning submarine. It resembled 2 turtle shells put together. It was 7.5 feet tall by 6 feet wide at the center and made of oak-reinforced iron bands. A single person would sit inside this walnut-shaped container and control it with hand-cranked propellers. He also created the forcing pumps that would flood the underpart of the turtle, and that would allow it to achieve the desired depth. And that's actually still a mechanism used in modern-day submarines, which is pretty wild. The turtle also had a sharp screw on the top. The operator would crank the screw to drill a hole into the hull of the enemy ship to attach the underwater mine. And the underwater mine that Bushnell developed was keg-shaped and was packed with 150 pounds of gunpowder, enough to bring down any ship. A few months after the demonstration, George Washington called on Bushnell to use the turtle against the British. The British Navy was blockading New York City. The U.S. ferried the turtle along the Hudson River. The plan was to attack the HMS Eagle, which was a British flagship vessel. The plan was for the turtle to travel undetected under the enemy ship. The operator of the turtle would drill into the hull of the enemy ship, attach the underwater mine, light the fuse, and get the heck out of there as quickly as possible. The hope was that the sinking of this British ship would become a symbolic turning point in the war, and also let the British know that no ship was safe. That was the plan, at least. But the turtle wasn't easy to navigate. It took strength and skill, and David Bushnell himself was too small and weak to captain the vessel the distance required. David's brother Ezra had the strength and a skill set, but he came down with a fever 3 days before the mission. They were forced to train a soldier on only a few days. It was probably like, trying to train a rookie pilot on how to navigate the space shuttle, but the mission went forward. On the day of the mission, under the darkness of night, the soldier did a great job maneuvering the turtle under the HMS Eagle. The soldier began to drill a screw into the hull of the ship. The sound would have vibrated across the entire ship. I mean, again, it's hard to believe this is the 1700s. It's not the 1900s or 1800s. Could you imagine the horror felt by those British soldiers inside that ship in the darkness of night, hearing this drilling sound from underneath them? Was it some beast? Was it Poseidon himself drilling his trident into the hull of the ship? Who knows? But the hull of this ship was lined with copper, and the newly trained soldier couldn't find a seam, a weak point, into that copper enough to puncture a hole to attach the underwater mine. And the soldier became too exhausted to continue on, and the mission was abandoned. As the soldier navigated the turtle away, he lit the fuse on the underwater mine. It exploded and allowed him really a good enough distraction to escape, and the turtle was never used again. Nonetheless, George Washington himself viewed Bushnell's work as, and I quote, an effort of genius. George Washington would put Bushnell to work experimenting with torpedoes and underwater mines until around 1783, the end of the Revolutionary War. After 1783, David Bushnell would disappear. In fact, Thomas Jefferson himself went looking for him in 1787 and couldn't find him, his whereabouts unknown. And it was only upon Bushnell's death 40 years later that it was revealed he changed his name to David Bush, moved south to Georgia, and he became a doctor and a teacher. Isn't it ironic? The man that invented the turtle submerged himself, headed south, and lived undetected for the last 40 years of his life. The thing I think about with this story is, what if David or his brother could have completed the mission that day? They had the skill set to complete the mission. And he was, when you think about it, he was so close to inventor immortality. I mean, his name could have been thrust into the history books instead of kind of being pieced together here at a MicroCap conference. But isn't that what MicroCap investing feels like sometimes? We need everything to fall in place for an exceptional outcome. The right people, the right solution, and the right timing. You can have the right solution and timing, but if you have the wrong people, they will eventually limit your upside. A business always rises and falls to the quality level of management. You can have the right people and solution, but if your timing is off, well, being too early is the same thing as being wrong. You can have the right people and the right timing, but if you have a mediocre solution, at best you'll have a flash in the pan, 1, 2, 3-quarter success story. You need all three: people, solution, timing. When you're meeting with management teams over the next 2 days or on MicroCapClub discussing ideas, just think about this. Does this company have the right people, the right solution, and is the timing right? One last thing. before I introduce our first speaker. I still remember the first MicroCap event I ever attended. It was in 2005. It was called the Edgewater Research Conference, put on by David Levine. You know, some of you might know David or have attended his events. You know, back then, 20 years ago, I was young and poor, and I don't know about smart or anything like that, but I actually just emailed David 2 months ago and told him how much I still appreciated that he allowed me to attend that event. And only looking back now do I realize, you know, how much of a critical thing that was to my maturation as a stock picker. You know, there's still, I think there's probably 2 investors that I met that day 20 years ago that I still talk to today, and one I would probably consider a lifelong friend. And, you know, it's also why this event, you know, yes, there's lots of retail investors here, but the young, poor, and smart will always have a place here, you know, because you're the future of this space. And quite honestly, in today's day and age where everybody has a Substack or a blog or you're on their club, it's a lot of the smaller retail investors have a lot more positive influence on a microcap company than they ever did, and even more so than any institution that's just going to complain about how illiquid your stock is and try to, you know, cram a 20% raise down your throat. You know, it's really the retail investor that makes the markets in your stocks. And so you're always going to have a place here. When I think about the 50 or so events I've attended over the last 20 years, there's probably only a handful where I can think of an individual company, you know, when I think back at that event. But in every single event that I've attended, I can think of 1 or 2 or 3 investors that I met, you know, back at those events and have been value added to my network. And my network today is probably the biggest asset I have as a stock picker. You know, and so what I would encourage all the investors to do over the next 2 days is we have more stock pickers here in the next, or over the next 2 days than probably ever at any event. And so take advantage of the opportunity. You know, keep your phones in your pockets a little bit longer. You know, stay out an hour later. You know, be present with people in conversations. You know, I have no doubt that you're going to meet some incredible people that will be additive to, yes, your portfolio, but also your life. You know, you may have come here for the companies, but I think you'll be coming back for the investors. Thank you.